Ram trucks built to serve.
Welcome back. Brace yourself for this. Guys, I think we're going to have baseball this season. After the MLBPA rejected the owners' latest offer, the owners voted to proceed with the terms of their March 26th agreement, which means a 60-game season starting around July 24th. MLB issued a deadline of 5 p.m. Eastern today, asking if players will be able to report to camp by July 1st and asking players to agree on health and safety protocols. So who better to break all of this down than Fox MLB analyst Tom Verducci. Tom, good morning. Thanks for being here. We're going to start with a simple question. We asked you before, right in the commercial break before we come on here, are we going to have baseball? You said it was painful getting here, but we're almost there. Is it 100% we're going to have baseball? Tell me it's 100%, please.
It's super close to it because they are very close on the medical protocols. That, as you mentioned, something they have to agree on by 5 p.m. today. And as far as players getting into camp by July 1st, there's really not a reason why that can't happen. So, yes, it looks like we have a baseball season. We don't have an agreement, but we have a season.
Tom, before we get to what this season's going to look, oh, sorry, Wilds, go. No, let me ask this. Before we get to what this season's actually going to look like, Tom, I have a question for you about how we got here, which is the owners offered 60 games. The players countered with 70. And when that happened, I said, oh, okay. They're going to come to an agreement, not a forced, we're implementing a season. The owners are going to counter with 65, 66 games, get the expanded postseason that they wanted, I think a lot of fans wanted, and we'll get there. Why didn't, in your opinion, the owners counter? And why did it have to come down to we're imposing the season?
Well, I think there was just too much distrust on both sides, which is kind of strange. You think back in March when they had this agreement that allowed the commissioner to implement a season. They got that together pretty quickly. That was only about 2 weeks after the pandemic shut down spring training. Things got really worse once they started talking about brass tacks during the last couple of months. And yes, the players were willing to give up their right to go to a grievance procedure for a 70-game schedule, but they didn't want to give it up for a 60-game schedule. And the owners are saying, we lose money every time we play a game in an empty ballpark. We're willing to go to 60 games, but we don't want to go to 70 games. And they just didn't trust each other to get somewhere in the middle. So, in fact, the players now are actually leaving money on the table to retain the right to go to a grievance. Probably about $250 million, according to the previous proposal from the owners. And in this case, you're talking about $33 million to players that would have been forgiven from advanced salaries, and another $25 to $50 million or so on postseason money. They're saying we're going to forego that because we want to retain the right to take this thing to a grievance. They'll have 45 days from now to file one, but that process takes years. So, again, I get back to that word mistrust. They really haven't trusted that the owners have got to this point in quote-unquote good faith. Now, who knows how that grievance turns out? It's like putting your fate in the hands of a jury, but it was super important to the players to retain that right.
Tom, just to move to on the field, when I was 14, I had a terrible, terrible season. It went a huge slump. And I saw Derek, I thought I was terrible at baseball, and I saw Derek Jeter had that famous slump, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I wasn't bad at baseball. Maybe I was just on a year-long slump. So to spin it forward, with this truncated season, are any players going to be, do you see, being super affected by just this short season? Or if you get off to a slow start, you're not able to catch up and, the all-star splits and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great point because a slow start now is basically your season, right? And I think it's according to how players have been keeping in shape and training baseball-wise in terms of how quickly they can get off to good starts. That's a great unknown in this because you can't afford a slow start here. I think I'll tell you one group of players that really, to me, helps, veteran pitchers, because they've been able to rest, kind of regather. They weren't putting miles on the pitching odometer over the last 4 months, so they can get to the most important months of a year, August and September, relatively fresh. So I think for them, it's a little bit of a break. But you're absolutely right. How people come out of this 4-month break without playing competitive baseball, we really don't know. And I don't want to say it benefits hitters. I don't want to say it benefits pitchers. It's just really a great unknown.
Could you throw, I mean, look, I love the answer of the veteran pitchers. Could you throw a couple teams out there who would benefit from a truncated season like this? Are there teams that are mostly veteran that you look at and say they should be fine? They'll know how to handle something like this.
A good question, Jenna. There's two teams that jump out at me. Number one is the Washington Nationals. You know, Strasburg and Scherzer especially, and throw Corbin in there as well. Great starting pitching. But remember, they won the World Series last year. It was a grind. They were a wild card team, had to go through every level, that full month of pitching, that 7 months of the season. There's a reason why we haven't seen teams repeat longer than any time in the World Series era, because the playoffs are a grind. They're much longer. Now the Nationals, again, they've been sort of refreshed. They don't have the miles on their arms in the first half of the season. They won with starting pitching last year. They could do it again. The other team I'm going to pick for a very different reason, the Tampa Bay Rays. Because pitchers aren't stretched out, it's going to be even more about bullpens and pitching changes. And to me, there's no team in baseball that has better stuff across the board, 1 through 13 on the pitching staff, or in this case, it might be 1 through 15, than the Tampa Bay Rays. They can just flat out dominate with one guy after another on pure stuff. This short season plays right into their hands.
So, Tom, I appreciate you bringing up a couple teams outside of what I would call the big three this year. If we were to have had a regular season, a typical season, I should say, I think, tell me if you disagree, Yankees, Astros, Dodgers, those three, I think most people would take them versus the field versus the other 27 teams. Right now, I just looked right before you came on. Fox Bet has Yankees, Dodgers, Astros as the three overwhelming favorites still compared to the rest of the field. Do you feel their advantage has been muted a bit, or are those three teams clearly a cut above everyone else, even the Nationals and Rays notwithstanding?
Listen, on paper, yes, I would give those teams an edge in terms of talent level. But here's the deal. The shorter the season, the smaller the sample size, the more their advantage goes away. In other words, the team with the best depth, that they can show that depth over 162 games, that will win out. As Buck Showalter likes to say, there are no Cinderellas over 162 games. But you know what? Over 60 games, Cinderella shows up, because the team with that depth and abundance of talent, that doesn't show over 2 months. So I think it disadvantages those teams that you're talking about, especially the case with the Dodgers. I mean, they give a boatload of young players to rent Mookie Betts for 1 year, and now they're renting him for 2 months. So to me, the big teams, yeah, they're super talented, but their advantage has been, I don't want to say eliminated, but it's certainly been diminished.
Tom, some of my favorite baseball moments, full count or 0-2, crowd gets on their feet, starts chanting, and you just know a strikeout is coming. That's all gone now. Fanless baseball. How do you think that's going to affect the pace of play or the actual action on the field?
I think it's going to have a lot of effect on players themselves. There's going to be a break-in period here. I mean, players will tell you stories when they played, say, in the Class A Florida State League, or extended spring training games on a backfield at 10 a.m. where there's nobody there. There's not nearly the kind of energy a player brings to his craft as when there's a full crowd and, you know, just cheering, as you said, on the edge of their seat on certain counts and situations. That is going to be a big adjustment for major league players. They haven't been in that scenario for a very long time. So, you know, you have to look at that on an individual basis. Some pitchers who rely on emotions, a guy like Marcus Stroman of the New York Mets, I think that's going to be a big adjustment for those kind of guys. So that's another great unknown in this. I think the broadcasts are going to look different. So even as us as viewers watching games or as broadcasters, it's a great unknown as to how this thing plays out.
Tom, there's obviously no winners in this pandemic, but I do wonder if, all things considered, one team that came out all right is Houston. I feel like there was so much of a narrative going into this season about the scandal and about the incredibly hostile crowds they were going to face 81 times this season. Now their story is totally on the back burner, and they'll face no hostile crowds. How much of I wonder if there's a little, residue bitterness from around the rest of the league, which is like these guys were cheating, and now somehow they're not even going to have to pay their full penalty.
Yeah, probably that feeling is mostly with fans in other ballparks outside of Houston. People kind of been lying in wait. Listen, I was at spring training games in Florida, and I'm talking about Jupiter, Florida, on like senior day on a midweek game with 2,000 people in the stands, and they're just killing the Astros. And I wondered, what is this like when they go to Oakland, when they go to Texas, when they go to New York? They were prepared to hear it all year long, and you're right. First of all, very few, if anybody, in the stands, but the whole emotion from the scandal, I think, has dissipated. So I do think this has given them something of a break in terms of the public response to the Astros. I'm curious to see what the schedule is going to look like. This team was scheduled to play in Yankee Stadium late in the year. I think the schedule is going to be redone. I think it's going to be heavy in terms of interdivision games and maybe playing the division in the other league. So you might not see the Astros playing the Yankees at all. So, yes, there's a break here for the Houston Astros. I think they're very thankful for it. And honestly, guys, for me, I didn't want to see that because I thought fans would really get over the top with expressing their displeasure. I'm all about booing them. That's part of a baseball tradition. But I was worried that it might get out of hand because people were so emotional about it.
Take a page out of the NBA playbook. Try to pump in crowd noise, pump in the booing. Tom Verducci, we are so close to baseball. Thank you, as always, for stopping by. Much appreciated. We got to take a turn, talk some NBA, and Draymond Green's got a message for all of his doubters, Nick Wright included. Next on First Things First.